What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and for the first time since 2022, we have a brand new iPad Pro. So this is the M4 iPad Pro, and I have the 11-inch and the 13-inch iPad Pro, one with the Nano-Texture display, one with the regular display, along with the new Magic Keyboard and the new Apple Pencil Pro. So in this video, we're gonna unbox everything and walk through everything and give you just my overall first impressions of Apple's first iPad refresh in a couple of years. Okay, so we'll start with the 11-inch model. This is the 11-inch M4 256 gigabyte variant in silver. And you can see on the box, by the way, the wallpaper, the new exclusive wallpaper this year spells out Pro, which is pretty neat. The box is very typical. You can see that the black, space black, has a different color for the iPad Pro text on the side and also for the Apple logo on the top. So a little bit of a difference there, as Apple typically does with the color coordination of the packaging. So let's go ahead and unbox this. All right, and by the way, I can already tell just from holding this, even when I hold both, how light the iPad Pro is this year. It's quite impressive. This honestly feels like an empty box. If it were a couple of years ago, I would have thought this box was empty. It's so light. So let's go ahead and take our first look at the silver iPad Pro. Okay, yeah, this is like just such a thin piece of glass. So let's go ahead and take this off here. So we can see that. Always nice. Let me be quiet for that. Always nice silver color. You can really never go wrong with this silver. I think this looks awesome, and my just first impressions are how light it is. I mean, yes, it's thinner as well. Apple is really touting this as the thinnest, device they've ever made since the iPod Nano. But this thing is also just so lightweight. It's crazy. This weighs less than the iPad Air. It is lighter than the iPad Air, which has Air in the name, which is just so ironic. And we're gonna look at the other differences here in a moment. But let's go ahead and take a look at what else is inside of the box. So in here we have our pamphlets, and you're gonna notice that we are missing the Apple stickers this year. Apple did not include Apple stickers with any of the iPads this year, which is sad, honestly. It's just a tradition, and it's no longer. So there we go. We have our getting started guide for the iPad Pro, along with our USB-C to USB-C braided cable. So it's just the typical color. It is, I guess it is color matching since it is that silver gray color, the typical Apple color. And then we do also have, I believe, our 20-watt power brick here. Yes, 20 watts. Okay, so we're gonna put everything back in here, and let's just take a quick look at the silver before we unbox the black, because you could see that the camera cutout on the back is also different. So we are now no longer getting that second lens. So on the previous iPads, iPad Pros, we had two lenses, a wide and an ultra wide lens. Now we only have that single 12 megapixel wide angle lens. Basically, you don't really need, most people didn't really use the secondary ultra wide lens. So this is gonna be sufficient for 99% of people, I would imagine. And plus it just looks better. You can see how it's kind of like etched out. It almost looks like those cases that people have on their iPhone where you can kind of just see like nothing but the camera cutout itself. Everything else matches with the body. That may be something that Apple does with the iPhone 16 this year. It'll be interesting to see. And by the way, this is the base model. This is a 256 gigabytes. So yes, it starts at 256 now. And this is the Wi-Fi only version, and this costs $999, so $999 for this. And also we can see on the side that the buttons, it looks like they might be a little bit higher than the previous generation. I'm gonna take a look at that in a moment. We can see the buttons on the side, nothing over on the left-hand side. And you will also notice that the camera is now in the landscape orientation. So it's now on the side of the iPad if you're holding it up in portrait, but most people usually have their iPad in landscape. So we're gonna have that now right there in the landscape orientation, but it's not centered. And we'll talk about that in a minute when it comes to the Apple Pencil, because the camera is not centered because of the magnets to accommodate for the Apple Pencil Pro. And by the way, just for reference, this weighs less than a pound. I know I've been talking about how light it is, but just for reference in your head to think about, this weighs 0.98 pounds. That's crazy. And as far as the thinness, this is 5.3 millimeters thick, which is extremely thin. As you can see right here, it is very thin. And we're gonna take a look at that Tandem OLED display here in a moment, but I also want to unbox the 13-inch iPad Pro in space black, and this is the 1 terabyte model because that is the lowest configuration you can get to get the new Nano-Texture display. This one was $1999, so $2,000 is the minimum you can spend on an iPad Pro M4 to get the Nano-Texture display, which is going to help with reflections and things like that. We'll see. I'm going to do some tests on that. But yeah, this is the Wi-Fi only model, as you can see. And even this big old thing is super lightweight for being being a 13-inch iPad Pro. All right, so we got the pull tabs as always. Let's go ahead and take those off of here. It's always satisfying because they come off so perfectly. So let's go ahead and take a look at the space black here. So of course we have the paper at first, and yeah, this thing is so lightweight too. I'm used to carrying around my 12.9 inch, and man, this is so lightweight. I'm really curious to see what the weight is like with the Magic Keyboard, which we'll test here in a moment. So inside the box, before we take that off, we do have the same pamphlet and the same 20-watt charger, but we have a color matching space black USB-C to USB-C braided cable, which is awesome. And it kind of has these matte tips right here, which is really nice as well. And then also in the box of the Nano-Texture iPad Pro is a polishing cloth. So this comes only with the Nano-Texture, and you can see we have the Apple logo down in the bottom left-hand corner, along with some directions on how to use it on your iPad Pro. And this is bigger than the one that they sold individually beforehand. All right, so let's take this paper off and see what that Nano-Texture display and the space black color looks like. All right, so it's our typical space black color, and I do have a space gray iPad Pro as well to compare this to, but I can already tell it is a good bit darker, and that camera lens, that the camera just cut out, looks so much better on the space black compared to silver, at least for me. But yeah, so here is Nano-Texture, and wow, okay, you can definitely tell a difference right away just looking at the iPad. I'm not sure if this is really gonna come through on the camera. You can kind of see it there, but take a look at how the outer borders here, the bezels, are not nano-textured. So they do not have that matte feeling to them. They are still that glossy finish that attracts obviously a lot of fingerprints. And it looks like Nano-Texture actually does a better job at resisting fingerprints as well. So you still can see some fingerprints on it, but it is definitely resisting those fingerprints more than the regular glossy finish, as you can see here, a comparison of fingerprints. And again, this one costs $2,000. And 1 terabyte of storage, I'm not sure if I'll ever fill that up, but that's what we have here on this iPad Pro. And you can see on the back, we do have the iPad Pro branding at the back, along with the magnets down at the bottom. So I really want to see the Nano-Texture versus the regular glossy glass. And we're going to check that out in a moment, but I do also want to unbox the Magic Keyboard here. So I got this to match with the 13-inch. So this is the 13-inch Magic Keyboard to match the space black iPad Pro. So the box looks pretty similar to what we saw on the previous generation iPad Pro. Not really a big difference there. So let's go ahead and check out what this Magic Keyboard looks like, because again, this was also redesigned this year. So we got a new Magic Keyboard with an aluminum finish. So this is also, I can tell you right now, picking it up, it is lighter than the previous Magic Keyboard. So I have the Magic Keyboard for every iPad I get. I think it is a must-have accessory. And I can just tell before I even unbox this all the way, it is definitely lighter. There we go. So that finish looks a bit different as well. And you can see this part is different as well. So a few differences right off the bat I noticed with the new Magic Keyboard versus the old Magic Keyboard. So inside we have this with a little getting started guide, no Apple stickers once again. And here is that Magic Keyboard. So it looks very similar to the previous one again, but the only difference is that we have aluminum, but we also have haptic feedback in the trackpad, which is going to be really interesting when I go to start using this. I will report back on that, of course, in my video as well. But if you press down, you can feel that it does not click as hard as the previous one. I'm clicking my other one over here. You can feel the clicks, and this one, you can't feel the clicks. So it's probably just all going to be software based, which is awesome. And you can see the little USB-C port in the side here as well. This thing smells really good. It smells very different than typical Apple products, but I like the smell of it. So let's see how the iPad Pro sits in there. So very nice, very similar to what we've seen before. No difference there. Let's go ahead and close it. And yeah, I like this exterior part here as well, which is also that aluminum finish that really makes it feel more premium, even when the keyboard is closed and just carrying your iPad around, it feels more premium. And then finally, we have the new Apple Pencil Pro. So this is the new Apple Pencil from Apple, and this only works on the new iPad. So the new iPad Pros and the new iPad Air. So we have our little mini green pull tab right there. We're gonna pull on that and check out the Apple Pencil Pro. It should look pretty similar. And you'll notice the packaging here, I have the purple and pink, but this actually comes in 6 different styles. It's kind of just random that, every pencil is the same underneath the box, but there are different designs for the boxes, which is a pretty cool touch by Apple. So inside, here we go. You can see we have our Apple Pencil, and yeah, it's just an Apple Pencil. I mean, there's nothing really to talk about here. Let's take this off and see what we have. So yeah, it feels the same to me. I mean, we do have the Pencil Pro branding there, so it does say Pencil Pro, Apple Pencil Pro on the tip. So that is one way to discern this from previous Apple Pencils. And yeah, of course, it will have the haptic feedback. It's going to have the new barrel feature and a lot of other awesome features. Let's see how this goes on here. So there we go. Just snaps right in. And that's why this is only compatible with the iPad Pro and iPad Air, the new ones. This will not attach, it will not, line up and work properly with older iPads. Okay, so now I want to compare the glossy display, the standard iPad display, to the Nano-Texture display. And keep in mind, we have a tandem OLED screen on these iPads. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I'm gonna put these boxes off to the side so we only see the iPads. All right, so let's go ahead and boot both of these up. We're gonna have them both in landscape mode for this video. And you can see even just the Apple logo right away, you can see the difference. You can just really always see that matte texture, that anti-reflective coating. I mean, even the glossy iPad Pro, Apple says it has an anti-reflective coating, but obviously the Nano-Texture is gonna be like supreme. Like it's just gonna eliminate most of the reflections that you would see. Even here in the studio, I have all these lights. You can see the comparison between the two. You can see, the honeycomb there from my light. You don't see that on the iPad Pro with the Nano-Texture, which is quite impressive. That's crazy. This is my first time seeing, a real comparison between the two, and it's drastic. It's not just like it doesn't just mute it, it just completely eliminates it. And I guess when it goes black, you do see like kind of a blurred out image of what you would see on a reflected coating or on a reflective screen like the glossy black. Now, I don't know if that's worth so much more money, for most people. I don't think it's probably gonna be worth it for most people to go with the Nano-Texture, but it is pretty cool if you're somebody who maybe flies a drone a lot, you're outside a lot. That may be like a big use case for it. But for most people, I would say you probably don't want Nano-Texture. It's just so much money. You have to get the 1 terabyte. So I don't know. We'll see. I will revisit this. I will be using them for a couple of weeks and let you guys know. And by the way, just a few details about this display that you're looking at right now. This is a tandem OLED display. It's basically 2 OLED displays pushed together. That's basically what it is. And Apple is calling it the Ultra Retina XDR, so Ultra in the name, and has a peak SDR brightness of 1000 nits and 1600 nits when watching HDR content. And of course, it has the typical 2,000,000:1 contrast ratio, true tone. It has the ProMotion 120 Hz display. Those are the main things that's going to differentiate this from, say, the new iPad Air, which we'll have a comparison coming on that here on the channel as well. So we're going to set these up at the exact same time and just run through this. So of course, we do have the ability to change our appearance. If you want everything to be smaller, medium, or large, you can change that right there. I like keeping mine at default, and this is where you can go ahead and quick start. If you have an old iPad, this is where you would be able to transfer over all of your data very quickly, but for now, I'm gonna set it up without another device. And take a look at this. We have a day 1 software update for the iPad Pro. So this is going to be most likely iOS 17.5 or iPadOS 17.5. So we're gonna update to that later, but I would highly recommend you go ahead and update your iPad Pro immediately after unboxing it. So we're gonna go through this. So this is data and privacy, the typical data and privacy screen that we see. If you wanna set up your iPad for a child in your family, you can select that here, but I'm gonna set this up for myself. And now we have the Face ID section where we need to set up Face ID. And this time we have the landscape orientation front-facing display or front-facing camera. So it's gonna be a lot easier to do Face ID without maneuvering the iPad and having to look to the side. So this should be a lot better and more efficient than in the past. And yes, I can already tell a difference than what we had in the past. It's easier to do Face ID, just by default. So that's nice. There we go. 2 quick scans and we are done with Face ID. Now it's asking to create a passcode. We're gonna set up later on this one. So we're just gonna set up a simple 4-digit passcode of zeros, but I would highly recommend you not do that. And by the way, it's a good time to point out the keyboard sizes. You can see the difference in the keyboard size here between the 13-inch and the 11-inch iPad Pro. So if you're somebody who has small hands, you might not like the 13-inch because the keys are so spread out for the keyboard. Obviously, if you have a Magic Keyboard, that's gonna be a null point. It's not gonna matter to you, but it's just interesting. The on-screen keyboard is so much larger on the 13-inch. And now we get the ability to transfer over our apps and data. So if you did not have a nearby device do this earlier, you can do it right here. We're not gonna transfer anything for now. And now we have the option to sign in to our Apple ID. So if you wanna get all of your apps and everything running, all of your iCloud photos and everything, this is where you would go ahead and sign in to do that. I'm just going to skip this for now. We're gonna set that up later in settings and don't use. We'll agree to the new terms and conditions. You get the option to, if you want to update your iPad automatically or not. I like, manually installing software updates on mine, so I'm going to disable that. Location services is a must, so we do need to have that. And now we have Siri. If you want to set up Hey S, this is where you can go ahead and do that so it learns your voice. We're going to turn that off for now. I don't like having Hey S on my iPad for me, so we're going to go to screen time. We're going to set that up. I do like having screen time. If you want to share your iPad analytics with Apple, you can do that here. I'm going to not do that. Now you can choose to have if you want a light or dark mode, or if you just want it to be auto based on when the sun rises and sun sets. I'm going to do mine to auto. I always do auto for my devices. And there we go. We are now on the iPad Pro M4. So this is the default wallpaper and setup that the M4 iPad Pro comes with. And as far as the software, let's see what the software version is. So this comes with version 17.4, and we can see the build number is 21E8237, which I believe is a specific build just for the M4 iPad Pros. And the reason I'm signing into this iPad Pro is because I want to download Geekbench. I want to run a Geekbench test and just test out the overall performance, because again, we have an M4 chip on this iPad Pro, and this is going to be 50% faster with CPU and 4 times faster in terms of GPU. So it also has a greatly improved neural engine, so it's going to improve performance for any type of AI related task and the different functions with AI, especially with iPadOS 18 that's coming soon. And also, one thing you're going to notice when I run this test is that the 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte models have 16 gigabytes of RAM, whereas the 256 and 512 gigabyte models on both 13-inch and 11-inch only have 8 gigabytes of RAM. So you double the RAM when you go 1 terabyte and above. All right, so here we go. We're running that Geekbench test, and we're going to see how it does. Now, while we're running that test, I do want to compare the overall sizing of the 11-inch versus the 13-inch. I feel like we've talked about this for a while, the 11-inch versus 12.9, but this year might be a little bit different because of the difference in the thinness and overall weight, because now picking up the 13-inch does not feel near as heavy as it did in the past. So this 13-inch weighs 1.28 pounds, and again, the 11-inch weighs 0.98. So less than a pound for this one, and just under a pound and a half for the 13-inch. But let's take a look at the overall size. I already showed you guys the keyboard earlier. We'll show that again once we finish up this test. But taking a look at the top of the iPad, you can see how they look here. We also have a good look at the silver versus the space black. And then here's a look at the side of the 11-inch and the 13-inch iPad Pro, and you can see that the button sizes are the same. So just because you get a bigger body on the 13-inch does not mean you get bigger buttons, because those appear to be the same size as on the 11-inch. And then looking at the back of these, really no difference. Maybe the Apple logo is a little bit bigger on the 13-inch. But I just think this year is going to be a little bit different for the 13-inch versus the 11-inch comparison. I'm going to do an in-depth video after traveling with these and just using these on a more day-to-day basis, but I think I may actually go for the 13-inch this year. I mean, unless you read a lot of books, like I will say, if you read a lot of books, you're probably going to want the 11-inch. Like if you don't, watch videos, if you're always on the go, I should say, the 11-inch is probably going to be for you. Now, if you have this set up at your desk all the time, you have it propped up, you use it as maybe a second monitor or something like that, that's where I think the 13-inch is going to shine. But for most people, especially people on the go, and if you like to read books, if you like to, read news articles, things like that, it's probably going to be better on the 11-inch. I mean, I find myself sometimes when I'm looking at articles or especially reading books with the Apple Books app or, Kindle or whatever, a lot of times it's just too big. The 13-inch size is just too big. Everything's too spread out. It's not as condensed like you're actually reading a book. And that's why I like the 11-inch. But time will tell. I will revisit this in a future video. So we just finished up with the Geekbench test, and we got an invalid right here. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I think it's because I accidentally hit X at one point and restarted it. But nonetheless, we scored a 3637 on the single core and a 14048 on the multi-core, which is pretty impressive here. And just the overall performance, obviously it's way too early to tell, but it feels so good. I mean, obviously that 120 hertz display doesn't hurt whatsoever. So it feels smooth, and it likely is very smooth because we have 16 gigs of RAM, which you'll probably never use on iPad OS. But here's just another look at those two displays side by side. And we're gonna go into something like Safari, and we'll just go to Apple. And here's the difference. You'll notice on the 13-inch, we have the .com shortcuts, whereas we don't have that on the 11-inch, at least not in the portrait mode. And we also have the buttons up top, whereas we don't have that on the 11-inch model. So here's another look at the Nano-Texture on the left and the glossy display on the right, the regular display. You can feel a difference as well when you're like, moving your finger on it. Your fingers don't get caught on the screen, if that makes sense. You have the oils in your fingers at all times. They kind of get stuck on there. It goes really smoothly on this Nano-Texture display. You don't feel those oils, holding you back from scrolling. Now, I really want to see what the Apple Pencil feels like on here as well. So, a lot of people speculated that this might feel like paper, like a paper-like screen protector, but I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case. So let's see. So anyways, here's what we see when we put on the Apple Pencil Pro for the first time. So it shows us the new features. We have squeeze, lightly squeeze Apple Pencil Pro to access the tools you need, switch tools with a gesture. We have scribble and easily capture screenshots. So it's asking us to try squeeze. So hover over the screen and squeeze the Apple Pencil to quickly access the tools you need. So, you can feel that haptic feedback. That feels really good. Just feeling that haptic feedback, that's crazy. I've never felt that with an Apple Pencil. So that's really cool, and you can kind of select your tools from there on the go without having to reach across the screen like you would in the past. So that is really nice. Let's continue on here. And we do also have Find My built into the Apple Pencil Pro, which is really nice. Okay, so we're gonna write on this and see if it feels like paper, and it doesn't really. I mean, you do have some resistance. You can feel some of the resistance there, and it doesn't even really sound like paper either. So this is not like a paper-like screen protector. That was the one thing that I thought and a lot of people thought could be the case, but I mean, it sounds more like paper than obviously this display does, but it doesn't really sound as dramatic as like a paper-like will give you, like those paper-like, not the company paper-like, but the paper-like, screen protectors. So I don't necessarily know that you should buy the Nano-Texture if you are an artist, because I don't know that it's gonna give you what you might be expecting from it in terms of it to feel like paper, because it doesn't really feel like paper to me. It has some give, it has some resistance, but it doesn't really feel like paper to me. But I'm gonna be testing this a lot more in the coming weeks to see, if Nano-Texture is worth the extra cost over the regular display. Oh yeah, and the final thing I wanna do is test out the new Magic Keyboard and that function key. So you'll notice that up top, we do have a new function key on the Magic Keyboard now, which is new. So we have an escape key, we have our brightness, we have all these different options for dictation, we have focus modes, basically like what you have on a MacBook is now on the Magic Keyboard. And this just feels awesome. You can feel the haptic feedback in this glass trackpad as well. And the aluminum just feels so high quality, and it has that cool touch to it. It feels cool to the touch like you would expect from aluminum, which is great. I mean, these are expensive. This was $349 for the 13-inch. I believe it's $299 for the 11-inch model, so it is a little bit cheaper, but it's super expensive nonetheless. But in my opinion, it is a must-have. If you're already splurging on an iPad Pro, you may as well get the Apple Pencil Pro and the Magic Keyboard. I mean, it just makes the experience so much better. But anyways, yeah, that is the iPad Pro 13 and the iPad Pro 11-inch M4 models. I have a lot of videos coming up on the iPad Pro and of course on the iPad Air as well. So hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you in the next one.